She was trusted to teach, to guide, and to glorify God. But now an Alabama teacher at a Christian school has been arrested, accused of having a sexual relationship with an underage female student. The school's own mission statement promises to, quote, equip students to glorify God in all they do. But investigators say Sarah Logan may have done just the opposite. Police say there may be more victims, and they're urging anyone with any information to come forward. I'm Kennedi Walker, and you're watching Law and Crime. She was a teacher at one of Alabama's most prestigious private Christian schools. Now, Sarah Logan is out of a job and facing criminal charges after being accused of a sexual relationship with a student. According to their website and social media accounts, North River Christian Academy promotes a mission of Christian-centered education, aiming to prepare students to glorify God in all they do. But investigators say Logan's alleged actions are anything but God-glorifying. The 35-year-old wife and mother was arrested on July 18th after the parents of a female student contacted the Tuscaloosa County Sheriff's Office, according to WVUA. They told investigators they had discovered their underage daughter was allegedly involved in a sexual relationship with Logan. The case was referred to the Violent Crimes Unit Sexual Assault Section, which began interviewing witnesses and collecting evidence. That investigation led to a warrant for Logan's arrest. She is now charged with one count of school employee engaging in a sex act with a student, but investigators say the case may not stop there. There are concerns other students may have been targeted, and authorities are urging any potential victims to come forward. North River Christian Academy, which charges over $7,000 a year in tuition, confirmed Logan is no longer on staff and released a statement. They said in part, "Our first concern is for the health and welfare for our students, staff, and families. Please respect the privacy of all these parties. Contributing to rumors and suspicions profits no one and contributes only to the hardships experienced by those impacted." They went on to say, "It should be self-evident to say that this incident is heartrending for all involved. This includes especially the families directly impacted. We have prayed for them and encouraged our entire school family to hold them up in their personal prayers." And here to break down the story with me is victims' rights lawyer John Phillips. John, thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let's just jump right in. Female teachers accused of sexual misconduct often gets labeled differently. Is there any evidence that gender affects charging decisions or sentencing?
I think if somebody actually took a survey of all of the states across the country in all of the sex crimes involving students, you would see some level of disparity. And some of it comes just simply with kind of the nature of how anatomy works, right? Like, even though it's regardless, it's statutory rape, if there's cases with penetration with a minor or sex, sometimes the male student gets more blame than the female student, in a way, and it kind of affects how it's ultimately handled. But all of them should be taken as rape cases, as sexual assault cases. It is. The child cannot consent.
Absolutely. And when the adult is a woman and the minor is a girl, does that challenge or complicate how abuse is perceived in court?
It does. This is something that it's always happened, boy on boy, girl on girl. But each time it's a little bit different. And, it's up to the law enforcement, here at Tuscaloosa Police Department, and potentially some state agencies like Child Protective Services to kind of get in there and figure out what's going on and what happened, and what level of grooming happened here, and is there a threat to other children?
This is a Law and Crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease? And research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to these outcomes. Morgan & Morgan is stepping in to fight to hold food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they're ready to stand up for families who deserve justice. If your child who is under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, visit www.forthepeople.com/food or scan the QR code on your screen to learn more. How does the public's perception of the teacher, who is a wife, a mother, and is supposed to be a trusted role model, affect jury selection or trial strategy? Because we cover a lot of these cases, and sometimes viewers may say, oh, if it was a male teacher, it would be a lot different. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that when a jury does see a woman who is a wife or a mom, just, they don't look at it the same?
This incident happened in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And so I actually went to college and law school at Alabama. And while I was on the law review, wrote a proposed, law review on psychosocial behavior of jurors. And they do take in information based upon kind of what's in their bubble and what societal norms are. And so, when you have a teacher who, this is a small town, and this is a small school, private school within a small town that's affiliated with the Baptist church. And so there's a lot of things going on here that could go either way. It may be that a jury says, okay, well, the school's motto, let me look real quick. The school's motto was equipping students to glorify God. And here we have, this situation. They could hold her doubly responsible, or could look at the other aspects of her life and that, she made a mistake. But, some of that just rolls into sentencing, right? That's whether she's convicted or not really shouldn't matter if there was, evidence of, contact of a sexual nature with a minor.
Right, but you bring up a good point there because, like how you said, even though it shouldn't matter, this is still the South. You live in the South. I'm from the South. I'm from Louisiana. So we know that, unfortunately, things are a little different. Given the background with this being a religious school, and this is a teacher not only accused of a crime, because it would be bad if she was accused of any crime involving minors, but given that she's a woman charged with, this with a female student, of course she's innocent until proven guilty. Do you think just because, people go based off of what they know, that this could be worse for her?
I think so. In the justice is spelled one way, it's defined many different ways. And the main reason that we know about this is because Tuscaloosa Police Department has investigated and charged her with a crime. But Tuscaloosa, Alabama is a crazy little fishbowl. And it is super duper small. You run into the same people at the same grocery stores, no matter whether they live in Northport or, East Tuscaloosa. And so that's a problem in and of itself. Is the more publicity this gets, the more, problems she has. Like I looked at the school, and they have all 22 of their teachers listed, including personal email. Now she's already off. I don't see her name on there, but that tells you kind of how small it is, that this school's like, yeah, here's their personal email, contact them anytime. Like, we don't have that for our teachers in Jacksonville, Florida, but she's got a lot of problems with this charge from, the standpoint of a small town court of public opinion, potential civil cases. Like, we've taken cases against churches in this very light, and it's the church, it's the school, it's the teacher, it's there's negligent supervision and other things that weigh in, that the whole ball of justice is going to be providing some level of judgment, while also remembering this is a church school, and that's a whole different level of judgment that she's going to have to face, both from man and God.
Right. And we'll touch on the potential civil cases in a minute. But do you think that prosecutors face more pressure or scrutiny in cases involving female defendants and female victims?
I mean, I think they used to, for sure. I think the cultural norm at least in Florida, where I'm mainly based, I'm licensed in 8 states and travel a lot, but there's more female teacher cases publicized now than there used to be. And, you know, even dating all the way back, the old court TV people remember the name Mary Kate Letourneau, like this pretty teacher that had, a young student that was kind of her boyfriend. And Mary Kate was attractive, and people judged her differently than if the roles were opposite, right? And so here, to your point, you have a female teacher with a female student, and it does seem different, but prosecutors are going to point out that ignore all that, like ignore the gender of everybody involved. This is a black and white crime. This is a black letter of the law abuse case, because a minor cannot give consent. We shouldn't look at necessarily what they wanted, what their relationship was. The fact is that a 35-year-old teacher, violated this student, and a position of trust.
What legal responsibility, if any, does the school carry? I mean, I know we just touched on that it's a little different when it comes to private schools or private schools involving the church.
Yeah, quite a bit actually. There is going to be some scrutiny and potential civil suits that could roll upon the school and the church. I don't know how they're chartered separately or differently, incorporated separately or differently. But the standard that people will be looking at is whether they knew or should have known whether this teacher posed a problem, whether she had any past, but also kind of how it evolved, what level of relationship was there, how many people knew about it. There's a lot of facts that could be, investigated, and it's still kind of early to dissect too many facts because we just don't know them.
Would attorneys have to prove that the student was groomed on campus or they had some type of inappropriate contact on school grounds in order for that to work, or no? Because just again, this is a school where people are paying thousands of dollars to send their kids.
Exactly. You've got a private school that had a vetting system fail by allegations. Again, she's innocent until proven guilty, but in these cases, you don't often see them filed just upon he said, she said, without some underlying text messages, evidence, trail. And that's where you kind of hook the school. How long did it last? What was known? What vetting process did they have? And look, you can, as a public or private school, just play see no evil, hear no evil with students, right? And again, it's kind of hard to dissect the facts, particularly with the shroud of innocence, but at this stage. But yeah, there's definitely. I get these calls pretty early on, and what you really want to do is say, okay, let the state, let Tuscaloosa Police Department do their job. Let them get started and investigate. We'll kind of hang on, because we don't want to get in their way. We don't want to spoil their evidence. And then as they have their criminal case, then you kind of come in and look for a lesser burden, frankly, because you need to prove by, the greater weight of the evidence. You just got to tip the pin just a tiny little bit. Whereas, in criminal, it's reasonable doubt.
Given the tuition, does the school carry more of a burden, just because this is not public school, and like how you said, they do have this checks and balances system that they have to go through? Could a parent, I don't know, get their money back? Anything along those lines when it comes to this? Because of course we hear about this a lot of times in public school, but does it matter that money is involved with tuition?
I think, what I would say in a closing argument is, because this is a private school and a private school, again, marketing under God, right? Like they're using God and moral fiber as their bold heading on their website. Like, I'd show that to the jury. This is what they say, all caps, inspiring students to glorify God. And what did they do? They failed to find teachers who were glorifying God. Having relations with a minor in a position of trust is not glorifying God. It's not glorifying. It's only glorifying yourself. And you can make their mission and their tuition. There's a little rhyme for you. Part of this, and try to get them to a higher standard, but you don't really need it. You have an abuse of trust of gross and grotesque nature.
Is there a separation of church and state, though?
There is, but for purposes of this, you have a church school, and so I don't know that that's really gonna matter a whole lot, because you really want to drill in. And like, if I got hired on this case tomorrow, in fact, I may do it anyway. I want to go back to this little website right here, this little button right next to your button, and take it on the Wayback Machine, and you're going to find that teacher's name and email address, and you might find pictures of her with children. And like, I'm sure whatever they scrubbed, there, you can get on the Facebook and you can find that data, and that's kind of where you start, and you build it, but build it under the text that this was tuition, and this was an expectation that there would be a higher standard of schooling, of education, with God as its center, with a moral fiber. And so church versus state really has nothing to do with it, because they're the ones that held themselves out as a Christian school.
Well, regarding the criminal case, if the victim does not want to testify, can this case still proceed?
That's always the problem. And it is tough for a case to proceed without a victim. And oftentimes these victims are significantly groomed. There's coercive control. There's so much, the adolescent brain really doesn't mature until 22 to 25. We say in our country that you're an adult as of 18, but before 18, you got a very, like, I have a 13-year-old, and he's cooking for himself sometimes, and he's pretty self-sufficient. And even though he's 13, I've kind of taught him the basics of driving. Like, I've got a good kid, but would I trust him to enter a relationship even with another 13-year-old? No, daddy has to monitor text messages, and daddy has to make sure. And when you have an adult infiltrating that, it's a whole different issue, because that adult is 35. That adult knows better and is in a position of trust and is violating that trust. And oftentimes it's the parents that find out through, looking at WhatsApp or looking at Signal and finding messages that were hidden, or other pieces of evidence that sometimes get grotesque, actually. And that's how you focus. But that child's going to need some psychologists and psychiatrists, and hopefully you've got to kind of unravel what happened here, assuming this was a relationship. And again, innocent till proven guilty, but this was a relationship through coercive control, voluntary, not, a teacher pinning a student down in the corner and saying, this is what I need you to do.
And just moving on to the investigation and evidence, what kind of evidence would prosecutors need to move beyond accusation and secure a warrant like they did here?
Yeah, you get into, Venmo. Sometimes there's exchanges of money. You get into text messages, obviously. I love yous. Don't tell anybody. I had a great time with you, after school today, things like that. And we're in an era of cell phone triangulation, where you can find out where two cell phones were at any given point in time. There's physical evidence. Usually, Usually it's the guys that leave behind more physical evidence, and your viewers will know what I'm talking about. Here, it's not, it's not as significant of a finding. But there's witnesses certainly that may have seen this. But usually it's the parent checking through their child's cell phone that finds the first levels of suspicion. Um, and look, there's a line with our kids where there's invasion of privacy, and you take it too far and you enter their lives. But also, we've got to parent, and we've got to look out for our kids too, because they're not mature. And you do need to have, conversations about sex and all of that as age appropriate. So it's tough being a parent, and it's even tougher when you have, predators around.
Right. And authorities are saying that there may be other victims. Can prosecutors proactively interview other students, or do they have to get their parents' permission or wait for someone to come forward?
Yeah, as a 20 plus year lawyer who handles high profile cases in media, sometimes prosecutors simply saying and detectives saying there may be other victims, and that getting reported is enough to make the phone ring and enough to make parents look in cell phones, enough of people. And again, I don't know if she had her own class or if she was like an art teacher, like was she enrichment? Was she administration? I don't know that. But you can certainly give it time, give it a breath, see who reports things. And then you can start, they'll have access through probably voluntary production of the class roles of this teacher. And they're totally entitled to make phone calls to parents and say, hey, do you have anything to report about this? This person was investigated. And meanwhile, the school is going to have their lawyers, trying to put up safeguards, around children's privacy, but also their own privacy and their own liability. So, at some point, you're going to have kind of competing interests.
Realistically, I mean, what kind of sentence could Mrs. Logan face if she is convicted? And what factors might reduce or increase that penalty?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking first and second degree felonies that could be, indicted if there was a high level of sexual involvement. What I don't know is the age of the victim. I don't know, the number of accounts. What I've seen is, like, I think there was only one count charged, but I haven't seen the police report that discusses, exactly what the allegations are. But this certainly could be a wide range of sentences.
Well, this is a case that we will be following closely. John, thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
The age of the female victim is unknown. Authorities say anyone who was a victim or has further information is encouraged to contact the Tuscaloosa Violent Crimes Unit at 205-464-8690. For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.